welcome back to Witch Baby Wednesdays. Today we're going to be continuing our 8-part series on the 7 Hermetic Principles. Today we are on the principle of polarity. If you want to see that, keep watching.
One day I'll be a queen with a kingdom all for me, and I'll cherish everything as I drop to my knees, cause I know how dark it could be. I'll always...
Hey guys, Darian here from Darian Empire. I never mention this, but you can definitely find me at DarianEmpire.com, Darian Empire on Facebook and Instagram. I am not on Twitter because really, who is on Twitter? Who's on Twitter? Trump is on Twitter, and that's why I'm not on Twitter. Anywho. Stick around to the end of the video because I will be doing a tarot reading which has no date stamp on it. We are on 1, 2, 3, 4. I think we're on the 4th Hermetic Principle. We did 1, 2, 3, 4 videos already. If you want to go back and watch those, check out my channel. Definitely subscribe if you're new. Welcome if you're new. If you've been here for a while, I motherfucking love y'all. I'm in a good mood today. So you're gonna get weird, Darian, because for some reason, when I'm happy, I'm super fucking weird. So we're gonna talk about the principle of polarity. I realize that I'm a day late also on this video. Check out my Instagram stories if you wanna know why. Okay, so let's read from the Kabbalion, if I can see it with all these lights in my face. Polarity. Everything is dual. Everything has poles. Everything has its pair of opposites. Like and unlike are the same. Opposites are identical in nature, but different in degree. Extreme meets. All truths are but half-truths. All paradoxes may be reconciled. Woo! If that is not a whole bunch of a whole bunch of bunch. Okay, so the principle of polarity. It's so funny. I think people take this principle and they just take it at face value, and they're like, well, you know, there has to be opposites in the world. I've heard people literally say this to me, like, it's the law of polarity. It's the principle of polarity. There has to be opposites in the world. But like the actual principle of polarity proves the very fact that there really, in a weird way, are no opposites, right? This book also talks about divine paradoxes, and this is certainly one of them. So there's a thin line between love and hate. Enemies are typically cut from the same fabric. That's not actually a saying, but I just said that. Opposites are cut from the same fabric. So, you know, we kind of hear these things here and there that, you know, when people meet each other for the first time and they don't like each other, they seem like polar opposites. They actually are like exactly alike. Do you ever have those friends that like don't like each other and you're like, if they only knew that they were exactly alike? I feel like that is an expression of the principle of polarity. So I've mentioned this before. I keep going back to Abe Hicks because all Abe Hicks talks about is really how to apply Hermetic principles and universal laws to your own life. So always have to go back to that. So one thing that Abe Hicks always says is every subject is 2 subjects. It's like picking up a stick. And on one end of the stick is the unwanted, and on the other end of the stick is the wanted. Now, of course, it's going to determine who picks up the stick is going to determine which side is the unwanted and which is the wanted. So, I mean, we can look at this. Woo! This is like a really hot topic right now. Not a hot topic, but it's hot. Like it's hot to talk about. Is the far left and the far right people online, on social media, in politics right now, they have the same vibrations, don't they? You start to know, like, if you, like, yes, they're arguing, but if you just go just beneath the surface, you realize that the energy is exactly the same. that they're really the same vibrational. They're just taking a stance for something that is opposing the other. And then also, like, it really, really, really shows you, and this kind of bleeds in from the principle of polarity or principle of vibration we were talking about last week. When you focus on something that you don't want, so when you stand your ground on one end of the pole and you scream at the other end of the pole against what you don't want, really you're just at the wrong end of the pole as far as like wanted and unwanted. You're at the unwanted end of the pole. It's like you just create a world where you see the opposite of everything you actually desire. Right? So this is what it means to learn how to, or this is one of the very important principles that teach you how to really learn how to live in the flow and understand that you have the ability to see a harsh world, or you have the ability to see a beautiful world. That if you are witnessing a harsh, terrible world, it has to mean that the opposite of that exists. It has to. It is law. And so our job, you don't have to take this on, but our job of learning this so that we can be in the flow of the universe, and we can really kind of like figure out life and kind of like learn how to play the game of life, and the game of thought processes is actually essentially what you're doing, is learning how to go from the unwanted pole to the wanted pole. And again, that's going to be different for everybody. But because what it's saying is that there is no definitive opposite. There's no such thing as a definitive opposite. When you look at hot and cold, cold is just like, what's really cold? We know what freezing is, the freezing point. But what's the difference between cool and cold? Is there really a definitive difference between cool and cold? And are they not just lesser degrees of heat? Right? So like, it's all just like a temperature, and it's just a lesser degree of heat. So we get from hot to cool, or hot to warm, to cool, to cold, to freezing. Like, what really is, where does the pole end and where doesn't it? Like, this is what I love about the conversation about black and white magic, because it's totally the principle of polarity, and the principle of polarity is really relative. It's relative to the person, to the individual. So what I could consider as one end of the pole and another end of the pole, you could find somebody else could find a further or a lesser extreme and think that those are the ends of the poles. It's really kind of crazy. But now I'm getting into the law of, or the principle of rhythm. But so how do we flip everything on its head? I talked about this in our first video. The really cool thing about the law of polarity, or the principle of polarity, is that you have the ability to flip everything on its head. This is where alchemy comes in. Okay? We can use all of these principles are the basis of alchemy, but this is a really cool concept in the law of polarity, because let's say you're experiencing a deep sense of depression. What would be the opposite pole of that? The opposite pole of that would be elation, right? Like, if you really think about, okay, what is the opposite of what I'm feeling right now? So I teach this a lot when I teach people how to manifest what they desire. When you realize that you're experiencing an unwanted emotion, I stop myself like, okay, what am I feeling right now? What don't I want to feel? Like, what am I very clear that I don't want to feel here? I am depressed. I am very clear about the fact that I do not want to be depressed. So then what do I want? And that's where we start to access in our mind. Before I even feel it like vibrationally, I access it in my mind. it's almost like I scale the pole. That sounded weird. But it's like I go up the scale on this one pole. Like it has to be this particular pole. What that means is less and less depression eventually turns into elation. So in the principle of polarity, what they mention is that the rule in alchemy, in flipping everything on its head from depression to elation, from hell to heaven or whatever, or any varying degree of that. You can't go from depression to confidence, right? Like I can't be in a state of depression and go, okay, I'm going to transmute this energy and turn it into confidence, because that's not actually the same pole. Those are two different energies. Those are two different, remember last week we talked about vibrational wavelengths. Those are two different vibrational wavelengths. But the principle of polarity these things are actually the same varying of wavelengths, right? Where like they can turn into each other. Whereas, confusion can turn into clarity, but confusion can't turn into elation. Do you get what I'm saying? Because they're not on the same scale. So, how do we apply this in our everyday life? We realize, let's say, depression is a really, really, really polar opposite of elation. So it will take you time to get from depression to absolute elation. But again, this is moving up the emotional scale, moving up the vibrational scale. We can go from depression to releasing a little bit of that depression and kind of being in a state of accepting where we are. And then we're kind of like, okay, we're not at depression where we're like resisting. We're not pushing against something. And then we can start to get to feel optimism, or even from depression to pessimism to boredom to then optimism, or let's say boredom to contentment to optimism to then eventually getting to bliss and elation. There are also, like, let's say something happens that's not that polar. It's not that polarized. You can go from annoyance to contentment, right? Being annoyed to feeling content or feeling satisfied. I think satisfied would be more of an opposite of annoyed. And it really is just a matter of stopping yourself and going, how am I feeling? I'm not even kidding you guys. If you've been following me since like the days where I did Freedom Friday, the very first official Freedom Friday video that I ever did was teaching people how to create affirmations by thinking about and creating an affirmation that had the feeling of the opposite feeling from what you were experiencing right now. I just intuitively knew, okay, if I feel like crap, how do I want to feel? Well, what's the opposite of feeling like crap? That's how I want to feel, right? And it takes, the principle of vibration. It takes getting into your vibrations. It takes really knowing and understanding. But viscerally and actually experientially, what I want you to take away from this is, if you are seeing something that you don't want to see, you have the very real ability. This has actually been proven in science too. I mean, science has proven the law of polarity for many years. So this is an ancient Hermetic principle that has been, as well as many ancient Hermetic principles, not all, but many, that has been proven by science already. So maybe not to this extent, this like mental transmutation extent, but it's definitely been proven. So, magic isn't this like fantasy, weird, woo-woo thing. There's actual real like science to this shit. Like this is real shit, It seems like magic because it's not something that everybody's doing, but like there was a time when flying planes seemed like magic too, and nowadays we're like, nope, that's just science. Like, of course that's possible, You have the ability with mental transmutation to see everything that is unwanted in your life and literally flip it on its head by choosing to see the positive in it. So what that means is, this sounds super like cliche and like, there's always a silver lining to every cloud, but it's true. There is always, there is beauty in depression. There is beauty in experiencing tragedies. There is beauty in, and trust me, this is coming from a woman who has been through a great deal of tragedies in her life. If y'all been following me for a long time, you know the shit I've been through. Even just my tea talk that I talked about recently. But that's not even like the tip of the iceberg of the shit that I've been through in my life. I've been through a lot of tragedies and traumas. And because of my ability to go from hating the trauma, pushing against the trauma, feeling victimized by the trauma, from to being able to go from there to saying, how can I be grateful for this? How can, like, just asking that question, show me God, show me source, show me whoever, like whatever goddess that you pray to, whatever, show me how I can see the best in this. How is this a positive thing? Show me the opposite of what I'm seeing now, because it has to exist. So I've been able to flip very many, not all, but very many of the tragedies, specifically the tragedies in my life, because I really had no choice. It was either suffer f***ing deeply or flip the shit on its head and find the silver lining and find the joy in everything, find the beauty in everything. And being able to do that is the reason I'm here today. I mean, it's the reason, it's been the catalyst for my entire life, is being able to flip everything on its head, being able to alchemize and mentally transmute the tragedies in my own life. So if you go back and you watched my Freedom Friday videos, which is a series that I did for like 4 years on my channel, that's all I'm doing. All I'm doing in the majority of those videos is I'm taking a struggle, I'm taking a suffering, a tragedy, a mental illness, or whatever, a tragic situation, trauma. I dive into some of the deepest shit, and I show you a way to look at it that is beautiful and transformative. Now, I'm going to teach you a little trick to actually overcoming and sort of being able to make all of these laws work for you rather than these laws working you. Okay? Because this book, The Kabbalion, it mentions quite a few times that if you don't learn how to have these principles work for you, how to become the master of utilizing these principles, and really, like, it's kind of like this book is like a cheat book. It like teaches you how to kind of like cheat the system of life, the system of the universe. But it's not like, we're not really cheating. It's what we were meant to figure out. It's what we're meant to do. It's like, you know, maybe not all of us are meant to do it, but people like us, people who are watching my videos, are definitely like, we're the ones that are like, oh yeah, I want to figure this cool shit out and figure out how to like ace life. Very often in this book they say, like, do you want to become a pawn on a chessboard? Which is what most people are. Most people are sheeps. Most people are being played by, are essentially like, just, I wouldn't say victims of the universal law, but you know, we're just all kind of like being pushed around by these universal forces. And the only way to overcome and be able to utilize every single one of these principles is to raise your vibration to at least a level above, if there are actual levels. There are no definitive levels, but a level that is visceral to you. You get a sense of clarity, you feel like you're above it. You have to actually vibrationally rise above the situation that you're in currently, okay? And then look at it from this now higher perspective, okay? How do we do that? I mean, honestly, like watch all my videos because they all teach you about how to raise your vibrations. So for instance, let's say there's a subject in your life that's really harsh, it's really rough, but you're in it. You're like in it. You're feeling like a victim. You don't know how to get out of it. You don't have a sense of clarity. Here's what you do. walk away from it mentally. Sometimes you can't physically walk away from it, but if you can, do that too. Walk away from it. Get yourself a little bit of a different perspective, right? Just gain some perspective by just walking away from it and doing anything in that moment that you could possibly do to make yourself feel better. Now, it's probably best not to do something that's like egotistical, like, you call your ex because you just desperately want him to make you feel better. Like, that's probably not the best thing to do. But go meditate. Go for a walk in a park. Go paint. Go do something that really feeds your soul, right? Not your ego, because that doesn't really lift you up. That doesn't raise your vibrations, really. You think it makes you feel different, but it really doesn't, right? So raise your vibrations. Do something that lifts your soul. Get out of the current situation. Go lift your soul. When you're good and ready, when your soul tells you to go back and look at that situation, do so then, and look at it with fresh new eyes. A lot of times, now from being a student of A Course in Miracles for many years, like 10 years now, I'm still reading the book. That's why I said like 10 years. 10 years and I still haven't finished the book, but I did all the workbook, the 365 workbooks, so don't judge me. But anyway, so one of the practices that we'll do in that is, let's say we're experiencing in our bodies, in our minds, and in our emotions, we're experiencing an unwanted emotion because maybe I'm stuck on something. And I know because I'm stuck on something, because I'm experiencing an unwanted emotion, I know that I am seeing this from a lower perspective. I'm seeing it from a lower vibrational frequency. And I have the ability to see it from a higher perspective. Whether you call that see this from the eyes of God, see this from the eyes of love, see this from the eyes of source, or just see this from a higher perspective. Or seeing it from a general perspective even, right? Because the higher you go, the more general we go. We're less specific. Whatever you call it, I do not care. It's literally all the same thing, okay? I don't get wrapped up in the details of what you want to label things. I will say something like A Course in Miracles teaches us to say, I'm willing to see this differently. I'm willing to see peace instead of this. I could see peace instead of this. Sometimes I'll say, this isn't me, this is my ego. This isn't me, this is programming. This is conditioned. This is programmed thinking. And I kind of take a moment to go, okay, this programmed thinking is causing me pain, so it's not serving me. I'm going to give this up to source. I'm going to give it up to God. I'm going to let it go. Let go and let God, whatever you call it. Give it to the angels, give it to the goddesses and the gods, whatever, it doesn't matter. And important, what we're doing here is we're giving it up to the higher perspective, right? I'm going to give it up to the higher perspective, the higher vibration. I'm offering this up to you, something that's better than, not better than the vibration I'm in, but more lucid than the vibration I'm in. Just a bird's eye view, right? You got a better perspective than I do because you can see more than I can, right? Like somebody that's up there has a better view down here than I do because I'm down here, right? So I'm giving it up to that higher perspective and I'm just letting it go. And I say, I'm letting this go with the intention of you, source energy, higher perspective, giving me, offering me your perspective on this matter. So I'm asking for the higher perspective. That's what is vibrationally happening here. There are so many different ways to do this, but vibrationally, this is what's happening, right? When I do that, then I just let it go. That's when I let it go and I go do something that makes me happier. I go meditate. I don't think about it. I let it go. Knowing that it's going to come back to me with a higher perspective. It's going to come back to me, And then, lo and behold, it happens every time when my intention is clear and I let it go and I go just don't think about it. I just go about my business. Sometimes it happens 2 minutes later. Sometimes it happens 2 hours later. Sometimes it happens fucking 2 months later. I mean, it really depends. It doesn't usually take 2 months, but You know, it could be a day later. It depends on what I'm doing. And all of a sudden, I will just see, it'll just be like a whole new prism of a new perspective of how to look at something. It's like I'm on the other side of the spectrum. And therein is how to actually utilize in a positive way the law of polarity. Now I'm experiencing the wanted aspect of that subject. I have flipped the pole on its head, and I'm experiencing the desired pole of this particular subject. You can do this with every single subject in your entire life. Now, when you're using this in magic, when you're using this in your spells, how do we use the principle of polarity and transmutation and alchemy in our magic? Now, I haven't even tapped into alchemical magic yet. Okay? Alchemy is sprinkled into everything that I do, but I haven't even started to study alchemy yet. So I'm sure that there is a whole slew of information that's going to be coming over the months, years, who knows. I mean, I'm just over a year into this, so I've got a lot of the actual magical practices to go into. So stay tuned for that. But how can we use this? And I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to just intuit this right now for you. And I want to encourage you to do the same. If you are a witch, use your intuition. You don't have to read all of this shit in a book. So how can we use this in our magic? One thing that I love about some of the books that I've read that have taught me as far as philosophies and the basis of performing magic and doing a spell. Like attracts like, and opposites repel. Right? So I really love that. What I love about that is, let's say you're trying to transmute something. You could get a representation of the opposite of what you don't want. So what does that look like? I mean, we see that when it's like, make sure you stay super positive, right? Like this whole law of attraction, like epidemic that went over the globe for the last, 15 years. It started at least about 15 years ago, where everybody was like, you gotta stay positive, you gotta stay positive, talk about what you do want, not what you don't want. Well, that's because when you bring in what you do want, when you bring in the opposite of what you don't want, it actually repels what you don't want. So you could bring in a correspondence. I just happen to have black tourmaline right here. You could bring in a correspondence that represents if you're trying to do it, let's say a banishing spell, you could bring in the opposite. This is actually the desire of what you want. Let's say it's a crystal that, I don't know, brings in intuition, and you want to clear clutter from your mind, and you bring in a crystal, a clear quartz would be perfect. Let's say you have a cluttered mind. It's this perfect time where the moon is prepared to help you banish and let go of things, and you really feel like you've got so much shit going on that you need to actually banish it, because sometimes you can just pivot towards the positive and just like let all the bad shit go away, like let all the unwanted shit go away. Sometimes it does work like that, but sometimes you've got so much built up from this negativity that you're just like, no, I need to actually say goodbye to this shit. Like I need to really do an act of letting this go, and your magic is going to look more like a banishing kind of spell. And let's say you're banishing confusion from your mind. Let's say all you felt is confusion, and you want, like, the opposite of that is clarity. So you're going to bring in a clear quartz crystal. This is just simple. This is just a really simple spell that I'm kind of helping you with. You bring in a clear quartz crystal. Let's say you've got, I don't know, you bring a black candle to clear confusion, and you burn something that represents confusion or cloudedness. I don't know why cotton is coming to me, like burning a cotton ball. That's really weird, but whatever. Something that represents the confusion, even if it's, I mean, it really could be anything. It could literally be anything. But dropping in that clear quartz it's as if you're really dropping in this energy of clarity, and it helps to just push away the energy of confusion, because opposites repel, right? Like attracts like, and opposites repel. So that's that's one very tiny way of using the principle of polarity in your magic and in your spell work. I mean, there's just so many different ways. Like, I'm pretty sure that in alchemy, what they do to change, like how they used to change, regular metal into gold, is they would actually take it through phases. They would turn it into one piece of, like they would turn it first into lead, and then they would turn it into something else, and they would turn that into something else. I'm assuming that they're using all of the principles to be able to do that. What I feel prominently is you take what it is that you're with, and this is like the unwanted thing, and you very clearly and concisely take the opposing force that is the wanted thing, and you just kind of like drop it down, and you go, this is the new reality. And there's an energy of, it's going to take time to get there. It's got to move to the degrees, but your mind has to reach, I know I'm probably losing some of you at this point, but your mind has to be able to reach the opposite pole for the physical to come through, right? So if I'm in a state of depression, I have to at least be able to pray to Source and say, please bring me heaven back. Please bring me elation, because I know elation exists. Because the reason I'm in depression is because I know elation exists. And the reason elation exists is because I'm sitting in depression, right? So you have to be able to say in your mind, at least reach that point in your mind. Maybe not vibrationally you're there yet, but you got to reach it in your mind. So you do the same with your magical practices. And that's all I'm going to give you as far as the magical spell work is concerned, because I feel like you could take that and really, really run with it. All right, guys? So let's get into the tarot reading. I don't know how long this video is, but I feel like it was really long. Okay, so I'm reading from the Cosmos. Did I read from this last week? This is for you. This is for what you need to hear right here and now. It does not matter when you are watching this video. This is for you. Okay, there they are. Oh, look at this. First of all, you've got two birds. That's just the first thing that comes to me. Well, it doesn't come to me. It's right here. Two birds, both looking the same way. One is a toucan. This is about expression, communication, the toucan. This is like a beautiful blue and green or yellowy, just this, and there's some black in there. Really beautiful, vibrant, like the toucan. This is Tucana. It's a constellation, I guess, in the sky. Very beautiful, very magical, very like expression, expressing yourself. Guys, we're getting into the Leo energy. We're about to have this Leo new moon next week, if you're watching this when I'm posting this. And this is kind of where we're going, right? Expression, being yourself, exuding confidence, putting yourself out there like unapologetically. And then we've got this other bird, which like is the polar opposite. This is a crow who is caught in a net. So this particular card is really about like procrastinating, delaying, making up excuses. And so the fact that these two came up is so freaking clear to me. We've got this one bird. It's like you were born to fly. You were born to fly. These are both birds. But one bird is caught up. One bird is caught up in the darkness too. I feel like a lot of times the crow can have kind of like a darker thing to it. We're holding ourselves back. But I feel like we're procrastinating when we need to be, not necessarily like we have to just get out there and like do the thing, but we gotta be ourselves. Like we gotta just be ourselves. We gotta just chill out, stop pushing against ourselves and just be ourselves. And if procrastination and making up excuses and like, listen, I literally just got a DM from somebody who was talking about like, they're gonna do this thing they're gonna do. They've been meaning to do it for a long time. They're gonna do it. I swear I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. I'm getting ready to do it. It's like, no, you're not. You're thinking about maybe doing it. But have you really buckled down and really thought about doing it? So I'm never one to be like, do it when you're not ready to do it. I'm not really one to do that. But sit down and think about doing it. Sit down and write down a plan just to help yourself focus on getting ready to do it. Like, is there anything that you can do right here, right now to stop the excuses? These are like polarity, right? Like it always has something to do with the principle that we're talking about. This is polarity. Why are you procrastinating and making up excuses? And what is the opposite of that? Really think about, like the opposite of just hiding yourself, putting yourself in this cage, this net, making up excuses, being really sedentary. I'm describing my life for like the last year, maybe 9 months, not that long, but this is the opposite of that. But here's the thing, what I'm seeing for this, it's not that far off. It's really not. Like, do you know when like you procrastinate, put something off forever and ever and ever, and then when you do it, you're like, that was so easy. Like, why didn't I just do that? You know? So this isn't asking you with this tucana. It's not asking you to move a mountain. It's not even asking you to climb the mountain. It's just asking you to admit that you want to go to the top of the fucking mountain. Just admit that, because that's your truth. Like, it's just asking you to be yourself. And because you're procrastinating, because you're making up excuses, because you're delaying, you're not actually being yourself. So for me, it's like I have this fear of like really getting out there with my music, like putting an album out and doing some sort of a tour or a workshop concerts and all that kind of stuff. And because of that fear, it stops me from even playing my piano, my guitar, and like singing. It stops me from doing that because I'm afraid that if I even like tiptoe into the tulips, that I like then all of a sudden I like have to do all this stuff. I don't even know what it is. But it's like, let's take a moment to look at that. Like, why are you really procrastinating? Right now could not be a more perfect time. If you were watching this in the next week or so, could not be a more perfect time to think about this. Why am I procrastinating? What am I afraid of? Like, don't force yourself to do something that you don't want to do, but just have compassion for yourself. Look at yourself with compassion. Again, that's getting a higher perspective here. Everything I just told you can help you with this guidance. All right, guys, so I hope that helped. I love you all so much. I hope you enjoyed this video on the principle of polarity. Please share these videos. Please share all of my videos with all of your friends. You guys, there is so much crazy-ish. I was just watching The Great Hack on Netflix. Oh my God. There's so much crazy-ish out there that is on social media. Facebook especially. I'm not on Twitter, but I can only imagine that like videos like this that are empowering, that are hopefully uplifting, inspiring, give us a sense of community. Like, we need shit like this to remind us that like there are good people in the world that actually, want to help us and not fight with us about why we're wrong about this and wrong about that. Like, we need to, here's the thing, like Facebook is gonna be having all these ads purchased and you're gonna be inundated with a bunch of bullshit. So videos like this have to get out grassroots style, like it has to hit this perfect algorithm to the point where it just kind of explodes. And I have a couple videos like that where they just kind of go viral. We need that. We need each other to make that happen. And we owe it to our fucking selves to put shit like this into the airways. So Share these videos. I have so many videos that really have helped so many, like thousands of people. I'm humbled by that, and I want to help more. And we fucking deserve it. That's just what I'm saying. We deserve to see good content and not a bunch of bullshit about people fighting about everything and bullshit. I'm just sick of it. All right, guys. I love you so much, and I will see you next week. Bye-bye.
Hey guys, thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, be sure to give it a thumbs up. And if you want to connect with me outside of YouTube, head on over to my Instagram to say hello, watch behind the scenes stuff, and check out any special announcements that I might have going on. Now, if you haven't already, head over and watch one of these awesome videos and subscribe to the channel. I'll see you on the next video, guys.
That's where my dreams come in and take me away to a better place. Where love is real and all my